Welcome to tonight's sleep story, which will transport you to the rugged borderlands of Big Bend, Texas, where the Chihuahuan Desert meets the Rio Grande in one of America's most remote and beautiful landscapes. You'll experience not only the daily rhythms of a mounted Border Patrol agent, but also gain insight into the complex world of life along the Texas-Mexico border. From the amazing rock formations carved over millions of years to the human stories that unfold here daily. This story places you in the saddle alongside your trusted horse partner, patrolling land so challenging that even in our age of drones and sensors, horses remain essential. Through your peaceful pre-dawn shift, you'll discover the calming partnership between rider and mount, the ancient rhythms of the desert, and the unexpected moments of connection that occur in this vast wilderness, including encounters with wildlife, conversations with fellow agents whose families have called this region home for generations, and the serious realities of those who risk everything to cross these unforgiving lands. Throughout your story, you'll find gentle breathing and relaxation cues woven naturally into the narrative, matching the steady rhythm of your horse's walk and the desert's own breathing patterns. If you enjoy this story, please click the like and subscribe buttons so we can continue bringing you these immersive journeys into fascinating corners of our world. Make yourself comfortable, and if you haven't already, let your eyes gently close as we begin your restful adventure into the heart of the American Southwest. You are now at a remote Border Patrol station in the Big Bend sector of Texas, where it's 4:30 a.m. on a March morning in 2018. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs with the cool desert air that carries hints of creosote bush and distant rain. The pre-dawn temperature sits around 45 degrees, that perfect desert coolness before the sun transforms this landscape into a furnace. Hold that breath for just a moment and release it slowly through your mouth. Feel how your shoulders soften and sink with each exhale, releasing any tension from your world and entering this one. You're about to begin another mounted patrol shift in one of the most challenging and beautiful law enforcement areas in America, where your partnership with your horse becomes essential for navigating land that has remained largely unchanged since the Comanche ruled these territories. Breathe in once more, deep and slow, drawing in air so clean and clear that city dwellers pay thousands to experience it at desert spas. As you exhale, let yourself settle even deeper into comfort, preparing for the gentle rhythm of horseback patrol. Now, let's begin your shift in this land of endless horizons. The gravel crunches beneath your boots as you walk from your truck toward the stables, your breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. March in Big Bend brings perfect riding weather, cool mornings that won't stress the horses, warming to comfortable temperatures by midday. You've been assigned to this remote outpost for 18 months now, long enough that the pre-dawn darkness feels familiar rather than scary. The stable complex sits on a slight rise overlooking Terlingua Creek, one of the few year-round water sources in this section of the park. The buildings themselves tell a story that reaches back over a century. The original mud brick structure dates back to the 1890s when this was part of the massive G4 ranch, its thick walls providing natural insulation against both the blazing summers and surprising winter freezes. The mud bricks were made on site, mixed from local clay and straw, then dried in forms under the relentless sun. You can still see the handprints of the workers in some of the bricks, ghostly reminders of the people who built these walls. The newer additions, built when the Horse Patrol Unit was restarted in 1998 after a 20-year break, blend metal roofing with traditional materials. The architects faced a challenge, creating a facility that could handle temperature swings from 15 degrees on winter nights to 118 degrees in summer shade, while respecting the historical look of the site. The solution involved modern insulation hidden within traditional forms, solar panels quietly mounted to add to generator power, and rainwater collection systems that channel the scarce precipitation into storage tanks. As you approach the barn, you can hear the horses stirring, having learned to anticipate the schedule with remarkable accuracy. These aren't your typical police horses, trained for crowd control or parades. Each animal has been carefully selected through a tough process that evaluates not just physical ability, but mental toughness. The selection criteria read like a wilderness survival checklist. Ability to handle extreme temperature swings, sure footing on volcanic rock and limestone ledges, courage to face predators, endurance to cover 20 miles of rough terrain on minimal water, and perhaps most importantly, the mental stability to remain calm in situations that would panic most horses. The selection process itself is fascinating. Trainers look for horses with specific bloodlines, often quarter horses crossed with Spanish Mustangs or other breeds that carry the genetic legacy of horses that survived in these deserts when abandoned by Spanish explorers centuries ago. These wild horses, through natural selection, developed traits that no amount of training could create. Efficient metabolism that extracts maximum nutrition from poor food, hooves hard enough to handle volcanic rock without wearing down too quickly, and an almost supernatural ability to find water sources. You pause at the barn entrance, taking a moment to center yourself for the day ahead. The work here exists at multiple crossroads. Law enforcement meets land management, cultural sensitivity meets national security, humanitarian concerns meet legal requirements. Your fellow agents bring diverse backgrounds that enrich the unit's capabilities. Rodriguez, whose family has ranched here for 5 generations, possesses inherited knowledge of hidden springs and wildlife patterns. Martinez applies military skills from Afghanistan to border terrain. Washington contributes academic insights on historical migration patterns. And Thompson, the stable manager with 15 years here, serves as institutional memory, predicting weather by horse behavior and maintaining detailed logs that guide operations. The barn lights flicker on with a soft hum, showing a scene that bridges centuries. On one hand, hay bales stacked against the walls and saddles resting on their stands could be from any era of horsemanship. The sweet smell of alfalfa mixing with leather and oil creates an atmosphere unchanged since humans first domesticated horses. On the other hand, modern technology asserts itself in subtle ways. GPS units charging on the tack room desk, satellite phones in their cradles, a computer displaying real-time sensor data from the sectors you'll patrol today, and a weather station providing local forecasts essential for planning. The feed room tells its own story of desert adaptation. Instead of the lush hay common in wetter climates, these horses eat a carefully balanced mix of local grasses, supplemented with compressed alfalfa pellets shipped from irrigated valleys hundreds of miles away. The nutrition program, developed with help from horse specialists at Texas A&M, accounts for the extreme energy needs of this work. A horse climbing rocky terrain in high temperatures can burn twice the calories of a horse in flat, mild conditions. Water management in the feed room reflects desert realities. Automatic waterers with heated elements prevent freezing on winter nights, while insulated tanks keep water cool during summer days when regular metal tanks can become too hot to touch. Electrolyte supplements line the shelves, not the sweet apple-flavored kinds sold to recreational riders, but medical-grade minerals designed to replace exact ratios of salts lost through desert sweating. You check the duty roster posted on the bulletin board, a document that balances multiple factors: horse fitness rotations, agent schedules, sector intelligence, and weather forecasts. Today's assignments reflect recent intelligence about increased sensor activity in certain sectors. Wildlife warnings. A mountain lion was spotted near Dawson Draw yesterday. And maintenance schedules for the various water storage sites maintained throughout the patrol area. The tack room reveals the evolution of mounted patrol equipment. Traditional Western saddles have been modified with attachment points for modern gear. Radio holsters positioned for easy access while riding. GPS mounts that swivel for viewing without dismounting. Weapon retention systems designed through trial and error to balance accessibility with security during the violent movements sometimes required in rough terrain. Medical kit attachments that put trauma supplies within seconds of reach. Each saddle tells a story through its wear patterns. Your own saddle, assigned when you completed mounted patrol training, shows the developing shine of daily use. The leather has molded to your sitting position, the stirrup leathers stretched to your preferred length. Small repairs. A replaced screw here, a restitched strap there. Mark incidents you remember. The time a thorny bush grabbed the saddlebag. The day a spooked horse brushed too close to a volcanic rock outcrop. Chavez stands in the third stall on the left, his position in the barn order reflecting both seniority and temperament. He's already watching for you, having learned to tell individual footsteps apart with the sharp hearing that helps horses survive as prey animals. His eyes, large, liquid, and showing intelligence beyond mere training, track your approach with what you've learned to read as anticipation rather than worry. This partnership between you has developed over 3 years of shared challenges. You remember your first meeting during the mounted patrol selection process, when 20 horses were evaluated for 3 open positions in the unit. Chavez stood out not for flashy movement or impressive size, but for his steady response to stress tests. When trainers used air horns, flapping tarps, and smoke machines to simulate the chaos agents might encounter, Chavez simply observed, processed, and continued following commands. That unflappable nature has proven invaluable countless times since. His build reflects his mixed heritage. 16 hands of quarter horse crossed with Spanish Mustang. From his quarter horse side comes the muscular hindquarters that power him up steep terrain, the broad chest that provides lung capacity for endurance work, and the calm disposition that made the breed invaluable for ranch work. From his Mustang ancestry, comes something harder to define, but essential for this environment. A toughness that goes beyond physical. An almost mystical ability to thrive where domestic horses merely survive. You approach his stall with the same ritual every morning, speaking his name softly before entering. This isn't just sentiment, but practical horsemanship. Horses, especially those who work in dangerous conditions, thrive on routine and predictability. Any change from normal patterns, a different greeting, rushed movements, emotional tension, can signal danger to their finely tuned survival instincts. "Morning, partner," you say, letting him smell your hand before running it along his neck. His coat feels warm and dry, a good sign. Desert horses can develop the inability to sweat properly, which can be fatal in extreme heat. You've learned to read the subtle signs of health through daily contact. The brightness of eyes, the alertness of ears, the interest in surroundings, the quality of coat, the fill of flanks that indicates proper hydration. As you enter the stall, Chavez performs his own inspection ritual. He smells your jacket, checking for unfamiliar scents that might indicate danger. He lips at your pocket, where you sometimes carry treats, though not today. Treats are saved for after work, maintaining the professional relationship during duty hours. His whiskers brush your hand, those sensitive hairs providing information about texture and temperature that supplements his other senses. You begin the grooming process with careful attention, understanding that these moments of connection are as important as any tactical training. The rubber curry comb comes first, designed to loosen dirt and stimulate circulation. Starting at his neck, you work in circular motions, feeling the powerful muscles that have carried you safely through countless challenging situations. Near his shoulder, you feel the slight irregularity of an old scar, a reminder of his encounter with the startled javelina 2 years ago, when the pig-like creature's tusk left a gash that required 12 stitches. Grooming in the desert requires different techniques than in more humid climates. Here, sweat doesn't just dry, it combines with the ever-present dust to form a concrete-like coating that can cause skin problems if not properly removed. You've learned to pay special attention to areas where tack sits, under the saddle, along the girth line, beneath the bridle. Pressure sores develop quickly in horses working long hours in extreme conditions, and prevention through careful grooming is far easier than treatment. The curry comb brings up clouds of dust with each circular motion. The Big Bend region receives less than 12 inches of rain annually, most of it coming in brief, violent thunderstorms between July and September. The rest of the year, dust is everywhere, working its way into every crack of both equipment and animal. This dust isn't just dirt. It's a complex mixture of broken-down volcanic ash, limestone particles, plant pollens, and tiny fragments of the countless minerals that make this region a geological wonderland. As you curry, you perform a systematic health check. Your hands search for heat indicating inflammation, swelling suggesting injury, or muscle tension revealing soreness. This silent dialogue between horse and handler has developed into an almost telepathic efficiency. Rodriguez enters the barn leading his mare Esperanza. The name means hope in Spanish, chosen by his daughter, who helped train the mare, as a 4-H project before she proved suitable for patrol work. His family's involvement in the horses extends beyond mere employment. It's a continuation of the cowboy tradition that predates the border itself. Rodriguez can tell stories passed down from his great-grandfather about driving cattle through these very canyons when the Rio Grande ran full enough that cowboys swam their horses across at high water. Morning, he says in his quiet way, beginning his own grooming routine. The scratch of currycombs creates a rhythmic counterpoint as both of you work. Sensors showed movement near Santa Elena Canyon last night. 3 hits, moving upstream. You nod, filing this information away while continuing your grooming. Santa Elena Canyon presents unique challenges for patrol work. The Rio Grande has carved through 1,500 feet of limestone, creating walls so steep that sunlight only reaches the canyon floor for a few hours each day. The sound effects in the canyon amplify every noise, making quiet movement nearly impossible, but also creating confusion as echoes bounce between the walls. More than one agent has spent fruitless hours tracking echoes rather than actual movement. The stiff brush comes next, its bristles designed to remove the dirt loosened by the curry comb. You work systematically from neck to rump, using long strokes that follow the hair growth. Each stroke serves multiple purposes: cleaning, stimulating circulation, and spreading natural oils that protect the coat. In this dry climate, those oils are precious. Too much washing can strip them away, leaving the coat dull and the skin vulnerable to sun damage. As you brush, you breathe in rhythm with the work, finding a meditative quality in the repetitive motions. Breathe in as you lift the brush. Breathe out as you stroke along Chavez's barrel. The barn fills with the soft sounds of morning preparation, horses munching hay, leather creaking as tack is adjusted, the metallic clink of bit rings, the whisper of brushes through hair. These sounds create a peaceful symphony that contrasts with the intense alertness required once you leave the barn. The soft brush finishes your grooming routine, its fine bristles designed to remove the last traces of dust and add shine to the coat. Chavez's bay coloring deepens under your attention, revealing the dapples that indicate good health and condition. You pay special attention to his face, using a smaller brush around his eyes and muzzle where the skin is thinner and more sensitive. He lowers his head for this part, having learned to enjoy the gentle attention. Time to check his hooves, a critical task in rocky terrain. You run your hand down his left front leg, squeezing gently at the tendon to signal him to lift his foot. The response is immediate, trained through thousands of repetitions. His hoof in your hand feels warm and solid, the wall thick and strong from genetics and careful nutrition. You use a hoof pick to clean out accumulated dirt and check for stones, thorns, or other debris that could cause lameness. The Big Bend's volcanic terrain challenges hooves constantly. Sharp-edged volcanic rock can wedge into cracks or chip the hoof wall. You inspect each foot, noting that Chavez's hooves show the polished appearance from regular rock work, nature's trimming system. Martinez passes by leading his gelding, named Satellite for the GPS satellites that guide modern patrol work. Weather Service updated the forecast, he mentions. Fronts moving faster than expected. Could see winds by early afternoon. Wind in Big Bend isn't just uncomfortable, it can be dangerous. The geography creates natural wind tunnels that speed up air masses to surprising velocities. During spring fronts, sustained winds of 50 miles per hour with gusts over 70 aren't uncommon. The winds pick up sand and gravel, turning the air into a horizontal sandblaster that forces riders to seek shelter. Horses instinctively turn their backs to protect their eyes, and riders learn to carry protective goggles, not for fashion, but for necessity. You acknowledge the weather update and move to the tack room to retrieve your saddle. The weight of a fully equipped patrol saddle, nearly 40 pounds, requires proper lifting technique to avoid injury. You've seen too many agents develop back problems from years of lifting heavy saddles onto tall horses. The saddle itself represents evolution through experience. Based on traditional working ranch designs, it's been modified with attachment points for modern equipment, while maintaining the time-tested balance and comfort needed for long hours of riding. The saddle bears the marks of service, leather darkened from sweat and oil, scratches from brush and rock, repairs that tell stories. There's the patch where a thorny branch nearly tore through the leather, requiring emergency field repair with leather strips and an awl. The back of the saddle shows scuff marks from the time Chavez spooked at a rattlesnake and backed into a boulder. Each mark represents a lesson learned, an experience survived. Back at Chavez's stall, you begin the careful process of tacking up. First comes the saddle pad, not just any pad, but a thick woven blanket that provides crucial cushioning. The weaving pattern isn't just decorative, but functional, creating air channels that help release heat and moisture. These blankets, often made by Navajo weavers who maintain traditional techniques, can last decades with proper care. The one you use today shows its age in softened fibers and faded colors, but its function remains uncompromised. You lift the blanket onto Chavez's back, positioning it carefully. Too far forward, and it interferes with shoulder movement. Too far back, and it concentrates pressure on the loins. The sweet spot varies by horse, and you've learned exactly where Chavez prefers it. He stands quietly during this process, occasionally turning his head to watch, but showing no signs of discomfort or anxiety. The saddle comes next, lifted smoothly and settled gently onto the blanket. The weight distributes across Chavez's back, and you check that it sits level and centered. The breast collar attaches next, essential equipment in steep terrain where saddles can slide backward during climbs. This piece of tack has prevented countless accidents where saddles shifted at critical moments. Now comes a ritual as old as horsemanship itself, the gradual tightening of the cinch. Horses naturally expand their barrels when they feel the initial pressure, a defensive instinct against predator attacks. Experienced horses like Chavez don't actively resist, but their bodies still respond with that automatic expansion. You tighten to moderate pressure, then pause, allowing him to relax and exhale. This process repeats 2 or 3 times until the saddle is secure, but not uncomfortably tight. While waiting between cinch adjustments, you attach the various pieces of equipment that transform a traditional saddle into a mobile command center. Radio holder on the right side, positioned for easy access while keeping hands on reins. GPS unit on the front of the saddle, angle adjusted for visibility. Saddlebags balanced on each side, their contents carefully organized. First aid supplies for human and horse in the left bag, survival gear, and extra ammunition in the right. rifle holder under the right stirrup leather, positioned for quick access but secure enough to prevent loss in rough terrain. The bridle waits on its hook, cleaned and oiled to prevent cracking in the dry air. Desert tack requires constant maintenance. What would last years in humid climates breaks down quickly here without proper care. You've learned to oil leather weekly, check stitching for weakness caused by sun exposure, and replace screws that loosen from constant temperature changes. As you bridle Chavez, you perform one last equipment check. The bit slides easily into his mouth. He's learned to accept it without resistance, understanding it as a communication tool rather than an instrument of control. The headstall buckles adjust to familiar holes, worn smooth from daily use. Reins attach with careful attention to length, long enough to allow him to use his neck for balance in rough terrain, short enough to maintain control in emergencies. Washington arrives at the barn, her horse already tacked and ready. She's working the southern sectors today, covering areas where ancient Native American trading routes meet with modern smuggling paths. Her knowledge of archaeological sites helps tell the difference between historical artifacts and recent activity. A crucial skill when a pottery piece might be 1,000 years old or from last week's crossing. Intel briefing mentioned increased cartel activity in the Mexican territories across the river, she mentions. Might see spillover effects. The cartel's influence on border activity follows complex patterns influenced by factors ranging from Mexican military operations to drought conditions affecting marijuana growing. Your sector sees less drug trafficking than human smuggling, partly due to the extreme remoteness that makes product transportation impractical. Still, scouts and guides working for criminal organizations sometimes probe for new routes, requiring constant vigilance. Thompson emerges from his office, clipboard in hand for the morning briefing. These gatherings, held as horses stamp impatiently and the eastern sky begins to lighten, combine operational updates with the friendship that helps isolated agents maintain morale. He runs through the basics quickly: sector assignments, radio frequencies, weather updates, and special alerts. Park Service reports a collared mountain lion in the Dodson Trail area, he notes. Female with cubs, so give her extra space if encountered. The use of GPS collars on large predators helps both conservation efforts and officer safety, allowing real-time tracking of animals that might pose threats to horses or riders. He continues with reminders about water storage maintenance, updates on vehicle access points affected by recent flash floods, and notes about archaeological sensitivity in certain areas. The Big Bend region contains thousands of documented prehistoric sites, from ancient fire pits to elaborate rock art panels. Agents must balance enforcement duties with preservation requirements, avoiding damage to irreplaceable cultural resources. The briefing concludes as dawn approaches, that magical moment when the desert transforms from black to deep purple. You lead Chavez from the barn, his hooves clicking on the concrete area before transitioning to the softer sounds of dirt and gravel. Other agents spread out toward their assigned sectors, the dispersing of forces that allows coverage of vast territories with limited personnel. At the mounting block, you complete your equipment verification. Radio communication confirmed. GPS showing satellite lock. water supplies secured. This ritual prevents small oversights from becoming major problems in remote terrain. You swing into the saddle with practiced ease, feeling the familiar sensation of partnership resuming. Chavez shifts slightly, adjusting to your weight and finding his balance. There's a moment of mutual assessment, horse confirming rider is properly seated, rider ensuring horse is moving freely without lameness or discomfort. Satisfied, you guide him toward the trail that leads into your assigned sector. The first mile follows an old ranch road, its two-track ruts carved by decades of pickup trucks before this became protected land. Chavez moves out in his working walk, not the slow pace of tourist trail rides, but a ground-covering stride that can maintain 7 miles per hour over long distances. His ears swivel constantly, radar dishes gathering information from all directions. You've learned to read those ears like instruments, understanding when they indicate interest, concern, or alarm. The landscape reveals itself in layers as dawn progresses. First, the massive shapes of the Chihuahuan Mountains, their peaks catching the first light while valleys remain in shadow. Then, middle distances emerge, the flat-topped hills, volcanic formations, and limestone cliffs that create this maze-like terrain. Finally, details appear. The individual ocotillo plants with their whip-like stems, the century plants preparing their once-in-a-lifetime bloom stalks, the delicate flowers of desert marigolds opening to greet the sun. A roadrunner appears on the trail ahead, looking at you with bird-like assessment before darting into the brush. These birds, perfectly adapted to desert life, serve as indicator species for ecosystem health. Their presence suggests adequate prey populations of lizards, snakes, and large insects. You make a mental note for the wildlife log maintained cooperatively with park biologists. The trail begins its descent toward the Rio Grande, following a route worn by centuries of travelers. Native peoples first, following seasonal rounds between river camps and mountain hunting grounds. Spanish explorers next, searching for mythical cities of gold, but finding only harsh beauty and harder reality. Then Mexican settlers, establishing small farms and ranches in the few areas with reliable water. American pioneers followed, bringing different dreams but facing the same fundamental challenges of water, heat, and isolation. Chavez picks his way carefully down the switchbacks, his muscles bunching and releasing with each calculated step. You've learned to trust his judgment completely in technical terrain. Fighting his choices only increases risk for both of you. Instead, you maintain a balanced seat, weight centered over his center of gravity, allowing him to use his neck for balance as he navigates obstacles. The geology tells its story in the exposed rock faces along the trail. Bottom layers of limestone speak of ancient seas, when this was beachfront property 100 million years ago. You can spot fossilized shells and occasionally the spiral of an extinct sea creature that once ruled the oceans. Above the limestone, volcanic layers record more recent violence. The eruptions that built the Chihuahuan Mountains and scattered volcanic bombs across the landscape like giants' marbles. Between the rock layers, erosion has created shelves and caves that provide shelter for wildlife and sometimes humans. You scan these features automatically, looking for signs of recent use, disturbed plants, footprints in accumulated sand. discarded water bottles or food wrappers. The trash of migration creates an environmental problem, but also intelligence opportunities, brand names and languages on packaging, providing clues about origins and routes. A red-tailed hawk circles overhead, riding heat currents that won't fully develop until the day warms up. For now, it relies on active flight, powerful wing beats carrying it between perches as it hunts for early-moving prey. The desert food web operates on tight margins. Predators must be efficient, prey must be watchful, and everyone must find ways to acquire and conserve water in an environment that provides little. Your breathing has matched up with Chavez's movement, a natural rhythm that develops between experienced partners. Inhale as his outside shoulder moves forward. Exhale as it comes back. This unconscious matching creates a unity of movement that increases stability and reduces tiredness for both horse and rider. It's one of many small adaptations that make long hours in the saddle sustainable. The final approach to the river takes you through a grove of cottonwoods and willows, leftovers of the riverside forest that once lined the entire Rio Grande. These trees depend on periodic flooding to reproduce, their seeds requiring bare, moist soil to sprout. With upstream dams controlling floods and farms taking water, recruitment of new trees has nearly stopped. The forest you ride through is elderly, ancient trees persisting but not replacing themselves. Bird life concentrates in these riverside corridors. A ladder-backed woodpecker works its way up a dead cottonwood, searching for insects in the soft, decaying wood. Black phoebes dart from perches to catch flying insects over the water. In the canopy, a bright red flycatcher provides a shock of color. The male's brilliant red feathers designed to attract mates in this competitive environment. You reach the river at a common crossing point, where the bank slopes gently and the water runs shallow over a gravel bar. The Rio Grande here bears little resemblance to its historical form. Early explorers described a river that ran bank full much of the year, powerful enough that ferry crossings were major enterprises. Now, in many places, it's possible to wade across without getting your waist wet. Dismounting, you let Chavez drink while you examine the crossing area for signs of recent use. The sandy areas between rocks record passages like pages in a book, if you know how to read them. Fresh footprints show clean edges and clear tread patterns. Older ones soften as wind, and small animals disturb them. You photograph promising tracks with your phone, the GPS embedding location data for intelligence analysis. The variety of tracks tells complex stories. Here, the deep prints of someone carrying a heavy pack. There, the lighter tracks of children. Athletic shoes suggest urban origins. Worn boots might indicate farm workers. Sometimes you find makeshift shoes fashioned from carpet or tire rubber. Desperate adaptations when regular footwear fails in brutal terrain. Water bottles abandoned along the trail provide their own intelligence. Black bottles are preferred to reduce visibility. Gallon jugs with Spanish labels come from Mexican border towns. More expensive bottles with electrolyte additives suggest better-funded crossings, possibly guided by professional smugglers. Each piece of trash contributes to pattern analysis that helps predict future activity. Remounting, you continue upstream along the American side, following a trail that balances being near the river with elevation sufficient to provide observation advantages. Chavez has settled into his working rhythm, that efficient walk that covers ground without exhausting horse or rider. His breathing remains steady and unlabored, a sign of the fitness developed through consistent work. The morning sun begins to assert itself, temperature climbing from the comfortable 50s toward what will likely reach the 90s by afternoon. You've learned to read the desert's heat patterns like a weather forecaster. Cool air pools in low areas during the night, creating small climate zones that can vary by 20 degrees within a few hundred yards of elevation change. As the sun heats exposed rock faces, warm air begins to rise, creating the soaring conditions that large birds use for effortless flight. A flash of movement catches your eye. Not human, but a small herd of javelinas working through a prickly pear flat. These pig-like creatures represent one of the desert's success stories. Nearly extinct in Texas by the 1960s due to hunting and habitat loss, they've recovered through protection and management. Now they're common enough that surprised encounters between javelinas and humans create occasional scares, but rarely serious incidents. You give the herd a wide berth, watching as they efficiently harvest prickly pear pads. Their technique, developed over thousands of years, involves using their tough snouts to knock pads to the ground, then rolling them to break off the worst spines before eating. The high water content of cactus pads allows javelinas to survive far from free water, an adaptation that expands their habitat dramatically. Rodriguez's voice crackles over the radio, reporting his position and status. The regular check-ins serve multiple purposes: accountability in vast terrain where an injured rider might not be found for hours, intelligent sharing about observations, and simple human contact in isolating work. You respond with your own position, noting the javelina herd for the wildlife logs. The sun has climbed high enough now to create distinct shadows, transforming the landscape's appearance dramatically. What seemed like gentle slopes in flat dawn light reveal themselves as steep drops. Solid-looking rock faces show the cracks and weaknesses that make them climbing hazards. This changing light requires constant reassessment of terrain, understanding that afternoon's return journey will present different challenges than morning's approach. Your radio crackles with a transmission from dispatch. Sensors have detected movement in Dawson Draw, approximately 3 miles from your current position. The coordinates place the activity in one of the more challenging areas of your sector, where volcanic geology creates a maze of narrow canyons and dry waterfalls that can trap the inexperienced. You acknowledge the call and turn Chavez toward the location, mentally mapping the best approach. The direct route would take you up and over a razor-backed ridge, shorter in distance but brutal on horse and rider. The alternative follows a longer drainage that eventually connects to Dawson Draw, adding miles but avoiding the worst terrain. You choose the drainage, respecting Chavez's energy reserves and the day's remaining hours. The drainage presents its own challenges. Flash flood debris creates obstacle courses of logs, boulders, and tangled plants. Chavez picks his way through carefully, sometimes having to jump obstacles that can't be gone around. His training shows in these moments: the careful assessment before committing, the gathered muscles before launch, the balanced landing that maintains forward movement. Halfway up the drainage, Fresh mountain lion tracks overlaying human footprints make you pause. The cat has been following the human trail, its paw prints lacking the claw marks that distinguish cats from dogs. The size suggests the collared female Thompson mentioned this morning. This adds urgency. While Big Ben's lions typically avoid humans, a lone person showing distress could trigger predatory instincts. You radio the information and increase pace within safety limits. The approach to Dawson Draw requires careful tactics. You don't want to surprise either humans or wildlife in tight spaces where panic could lead to injury. Instead, you make deliberate noise, allowing Chavez's hooves to strike rocks, occasionally calling out Border Patrol in both English and Spanish. The goal is controlled contact, not dramatic confrontation. The draw itself is a geological showcase, water-carved channels through layers of volcanic rock, creating a winding passage that alternates between narrow slots and wider chambers. Thorny bushes thrive here, their spines creating natural barriers that funnel movement into predictable paths. You've learned to read these plant signatures, understanding how vegetation patterns indicate water availability and travel routes. Movement ahead, human figures resting in the shade of a large rock. Your binoculars reveal 3 people, their postures suggesting exhaustion rather than watchfulness. No sign of the mountain lion, though that means little given the cat's ability to vanish into terrain that seems to offer no hiding places. You approach at a steady walk, keeping hands visible and voice calm. Good morning, Border Patrol. Please don't move. The words come automatically, trained through hundreds of similar encounters. The group, 2 men and a woman, make no attempt to flee. This deep into the desert, exhaustion usually overrides any impulse to run. As you dismount, ground-tying Chavez with dropped reins, you assess the situation. Their clothing tells stories. Light cotton shirts already showing salt stains from dried sweat, jeans torn by thorns and rocks, shoes completely wrong for this terrain. One man's feet show through holes worn in canvas sneakers. The woman clutches an empty gallon jug, its plastic crackling with dryness. First aid takes priority over law enforcement. You retrieve water from your saddlebags, watching for signs of dehydration, skin elasticity, lip color, speech clarity. These 3 show moderate symptoms, serious but not yet critical. In July's extreme heat, their condition would likely be fatal. As they recover with water and electrolyte supplements, their story emerges in fragments. From Michoacan, Mexico's farming heartland, where drought and cartel violence have disrupted traditional farming. The older man is the woman's father, the younger her husband. They paid $3,000 each to a guide who abandoned them 2 days ago when they couldn't keep pace. Since then, they've been wandering, following what they thought was the river, but was actually a dry creek bed. These stories repeat with variations: economic desperation, family connections pulling northward, smugglers who view humans as disposable cargo. You've heard hundreds of versions, each unique in details but similar in desperation. The complexities of global economics, climate change, and government failures concentrate into individual human dramas played out in this unforgiving landscape. While waiting for vehicle transport, you provide basic first aid for their feet. Blisters have progressed to open wounds. Infection risks in an environment where bacteria thrive in the contrast between sterile sand and contaminated water sources. The woman watches Chavez with curiosity, overcoming fear, asking in Spanish if he has a name. When you tell her, she smiles slightly. The first human expression beyond exhaustion you've seen. Martinez arrives on his horse, having responded to your radio traffic. His presence allows one agent to maintain security, while the other provides aid. It's a practiced routine born from experience. Desperate people sometimes make dangerous decisions, and maintaining tactical awareness prevents situations from escalating. Together, you continue hydrating the group and treating their injuries while waiting for wheeled transport. The transport unit arrives in a cloud of dust, a specially modified truck capable of navigating roads that would challenge most vehicles. The driver, Agent Cooper, brings additional medical supplies and begins the formal processing. Photographs, fingerprints, basic biographical information. Everything feeds into databases that track patterns, identify repeat crossers, and sometimes reunite families separated during dangerous journeys. After the group departs in custody, you and Martinez take a few minutes to debrief. He mentions seeing more crossing attempts in this sector lately, possibly due to increased enforcement in urban areas pushing traffic toward remote regions. It's a pattern that repeats cyclically. Enforcement success in one area creates pressure in others, often with deadly consequences as crossers attempt increasingly dangerous routes. You remount and continue your patrol, the interaction leaving the familiar mix of satisfaction at lives saved and frustration at systemic failures that create such desperation. Chavez seems to sense your mood, moving with extra care as if understanding the emotional weight these encounters carry. The partnership between horse and rider extends beyond physical to emotional support, the steady rhythm of movement providing meditation after intense human drama. The patrol route now angles toward higher elevation, climbing out of the draw system toward the flat-topped hills. The change in plants marks increasing elevation, desert grasslands replacing thorny shrubs, scattered junipers appearing where slightly cooler temperatures and marginally higher rainfall create opportunities. These transition zones support the highest variety of life, mixing species from different zones. A golden eagle circles high overhead, riding warm air currents that spiral up from sun-heated rocks. These magnificent hunters, with wingspans exceeding 7 feet, patrol territories that can encompass 100 square miles. They hunt everything from rabbits to young deer, occasionally taking javelinas or even young mountain goats in the park's highest elevations. Watching one soar reminds you of the vast scale of this landscape. What seems like comprehensive patrol coverage from ground level is merely scratching the surface of this complex terrain. The trail crests a ridge, revealing a panoramic view that stretches to the horizon in all directions. To the south, Mexico's mountains mirror the Chisos Mountains, part of the same geological story. To the west, the desert stretches toward California, an ocean of creosote and limestone. North and east, the grasslands of the Edwards Plateau begin their transition to the Great Plains. You're at a crossroads of ecosystems, cultures, and nations. As morning progresses into afternoon, the temperature climbs steadily. Desert heat becomes a physical presence by early afternoon, requiring constant attention to Chavez's condition. His dark coat absorbs solar radiation, demanding careful management of work and rest cycles. You guide Chavez to one of the sector's few reliable water sources, a spring-fed natural rock pool hidden in a side canyon. The approach requires local knowledge. No trail marks the route, and satellite imagery shows only undifferentiated rock. Rodriguez's grandfather showed him this spot decades ago, part of the inherited landscape knowledge that makes generational residents invaluable to patrol operations. The rock pool sits in constant shade, protected by overhanging rocks that prevent evaporation. The water stays cool even in summer, filtered through limestone that adds minerals while removing impurities. Tiny shrimp swim in the depths, prehistoric creatures that survive dry periods as dormant eggs, hatching when water returns. Their presence indicates water quality. They're sensitive to the pollution and won't survive in contaminated pools. While Chavez drinks and rests, you perform a standing meditation of sorts, letting senses expand to take in the full environment. The buzz of bees working late-blooming plants. The rustle of a lizard hunting insects in leaf litter. The distant scream of a red-tailed hawk defending territory. Each sound contributes to the desert's complex audio landscape, patterns that alert observers to disruptions or dangers. Your radio interrupts the peaceful moment. Washington reporting artifact theft in her sector. Someone has dug into a documented site, probably seeking Native American relics for the black market. It's another enforcement challenge in this multi-jurisdictional landscape where Border Patrol, Park Service, and Texas state authorities overlap. The crime will require careful documentation and interagency coordination. The afternoon patrol takes you through different habitat types as you work back toward base. A grass fire scar from last season shows recovery in progress. Bunch grasses resprouting from underground roots, annual flowers taking advantage of reduced competition, young shrubs establishing in the nutrient-rich ash. Fire is a natural part of this ecosystem, but climate change has altered fire frequency and intensity, challenging land managers to balance natural processes with protection of resources and communities. Movement in your peripheral vision resolves into a group of mule deer, does with this year's fawns grazing on fresh growth in the burn area. They watch you warily, but don't flee. Generations of protection within the park have reduced but not eliminated their fear of humans. The fawns show spotted coats that provide camouflage in dappled light, evolution's answer to predation pressure from mountain lions and formerly wolves. Chavez notices the deer but shows no concern. Another benefit of experienced patrol horses who've learned to tell the difference between routine wildlife and genuine threats. A less seasoned horse might spook at unexpected movement, potentially dangerous in rough terrain. This calm confidence allows you to observe wildlife behavior that provides intelligence about unusual activity in the sector. Animals are often the first to detect human presence, their alarm calls serving as early warning systems. A turkey vulture lands clumsily nearby, investigating something in the grass. These cleanup specialists provide crucial ecological services, cleaning the landscape of deaths that would otherwise breed disease. Their naked heads, ugly by human standards, perfectly adapt them for hygienic feeding on rotting flesh. The vulture finds nothing of interest and launches again, catching a warm air current that carries it upward with minimal effort. You check your GPS, confirming position and timing. The afternoon has progressed faster than expected, shadows beginning to lengthen as the sun angles toward the western horizon. Time moves differently in the desert. Hours can pass in what seems like minutes when absorbed in the rhythm of patrol, or minutes can stretch like hours when dealing with tense situations. You've learned to trust technology over perception for time management. The return route follows a different path than morning's departure, completing a large loop that maximizes coverage while avoiding redundancy. This section crosses an area of archaeological sensitivity, a documented campsite used by native peoples for perhaps thousands of years. Burned rock middens mark ancient cooking sites. Stone flakes from tool-making cover the ground like confetti from a party held centuries ago. You guide Chavez carefully through this area, following established trails to avoid disturbing artifacts. Laws protect these sites, recognizing their irreplaceable value for understanding human adaptation to harsh environments. Every artifact removed or site damaged represents lost knowledge, pages torn from the book of human history. Near the site, a desert plant displays its magnificent flowering stalk, reaching 15 feet skyward like a fuzzy exclamation point. These plants bloom only once after growing for decades, then die, their life force exhausted in one spectacular reproductive effort. Native peoples harvested these plants before blooming, roasting them in stone-lined pits to convert complex starches into digestible sugars. The practice required sophisticated understanding of plant timing and nutrition. The final miles to base pass through familiar territory, landmarks greeting you like old friends. The balanced rock formation where geology students come to study erosion. The lone mesquite tree that somehow thrives miles from others of its species, possibly grown from a seed carried in a bird's digestive tract. The dry waterfall where flash floods have polished granite to mirror smoothness. Chavez's pace quickens slightly as he recognizes the approaching end of the workday. Not a rushed eagerness, but a subtle increase in energy, like a marathon runner seeing the finish line. You let him choose his speed, trusting his judgment about remaining energy reserves. The partnership has deepened through another day of shared challenges, strengthening bonds built on mutual trust and respect. Back at the stables, you begin the careful process of untacking and cooling Chavez down. His welfare comes before your comfort, an absolute rule in professional horsemanship. You walk him in slow circles, allowing body temperature to normalize gradually. Rapid cooling can cause muscle cramps or colic, potentially fatal conditions in horses. The walking also helps you decompress, transitioning from the hypervigilance of patrol to the calmer awareness of stable work. Other agents return with their mounts, each bringing pieces of the day's intelligence puzzle. Thompson coordinates the debrief, gathering information that will be compiled into reports for sector leadership. Patterns emerge from individual observations. Increased activity in certain areas, changes in crossing demographics, equipment or tactics suggesting organized smuggling operations versus independent attempts. As Chavez's breathing returns to normal, you begin removing tack in reverse order from morning's application. The bridle comes off first, revealing the slight indentations where leather pressed against hair. You massage these areas gently, increasing circulation and preventing soreness. The saddle's removal brings audible relief from Chavez, not from pain, but from the simple pleasure of freedom from equipment. The sweat marks under the saddle tell their own story of the day's work. Even distribution indicates proper saddle fit and balanced riding. You check carefully for any rubs or pressure sores, early intervention preventing minor issues from becoming major problems. Everything appears normal, testament to quality equipment and careful preparation. Brushing away sweat and dust becomes a meditation of sorts. The familiar motions, the soft sounds of brush on coat, Chavez's occasional sighs of contentment, all contribute to a sense of completion and accomplishment. You've covered nearly 20 miles of challenging terrain, intercepted one group of crossers who might have died without intervention, gathered intelligence on sector activity, and maintained the visible presence that deters criminal activity. With Chavez settled in his stall, contentedly eating hay, you turn to administrative duties. The computer terminal in the ready room seems harsh after a day in natural light, but documentation is crucial. Your reports will join others in databases analyzed for patterns, trends, and anomalies. What seems like boring paperwork contributes to larger understanding of border dynamics. You write with attention to detail, knowing that precision matters. The GPS coordinates of the morning's apprehension, physical descriptions of those detained, evidence of the mountain lion following human trails, archaeological vandalism in Washington sector. Each detail might seem minor alone, but could prove significant when combined with other intelligence. The report writing offers time for reflection on the day's events. 3 lives potentially saved through intervention. No injuries to agents or horses. Wildlife observed and documented. Archaeological sites protected. It's easy to focus on the challenges and frustrations of border work, but acknowledging successes maintains morale and perspective. Thompson stops by as you're finishing reports. His decades of experience show in economical movements and thoughtful observations. "Good work today," he says simply, but the words carry weight. He understands the physical challenges, moral complexities, and emotional toll of this work. His approval isn't given lightly. You complete final tasks, checking tomorrow's patrol assignments, ensuring equipment is clean and functional, confirming Chavez's evening care instructions with the stable staff who will check water and hay overnight. These closing rituals provide structure to days that can vary wildly in intensity and challenges. Stepping outside the station, you're greeted by the desert's evening transformation. The harsh light softens to gold, then amber, painting the mountains in colors that no photograph captures accurately. The temperature drops noticeably, the rocks beginning their nightly release of stored heat. Creatures of the night begin stirring, bats emerging from roosts, owls calling territory, nocturnal snakes beginning their hunts. The drive home follows roads that transform with darkness. What seemed familiar in daylight becomes mysterious. Headlights catching eyes shine from unknown creatures. The radio plays local news, water restrictions, school board meetings, high school sports scores. Normal life continues despite the dramas playing out in the desert. Most residents unaware of the daily challenges faced by those who patrol the borders. You think about Chavez, probably dozing now in his stall. Tomorrow will bring another patrol, different challenges, continued partnership. The bond between patrol horse and rider deepens through shared experiences, becoming something beyond mere working relationship. It's a connection to traditions reaching back to when humans first partnered with horses, adapted to modern realities but fundamentally unchanged. At home, you follow evening routines that help process the day's experiences. A shower washes away dust and sweat, but not memories. Simple food satisfies hunger sharpened by physical activity. Perhaps some reading, history of the region, natural science, policy analysis. The job requires continuous learning, understanding evolving situations, and adapting techniques accordingly. As bedtime approaches, your body remembers Chavez's rhythm. That steady walk that carried you safely through another day becomes a physical memory, muscles relaxing into remembered patterns. The partnership extends beyond working hours, the calm presence of a trusted horse echoing in quiet moments. You think about the complexities witnessed today. Desperate people risking everything for opportunity, magnificent landscapes threatened by climate change, ancient cultures whose descendants still inhabit these borderlands, modern technology attempting to control age-old human movements. No simple answers exist for these intersecting challenges. Yet there's profound satisfaction in the work. Lives saved through intervention. Landscapes protected through presence. Partnerships with horses, fellow agents, even the desert itself, that provide meaning beyond paychecks. The Big Bend teaches patience, resilience, and humility. These lessons, learned through sweat and occasional tears, shape those who stay long enough to understand. Sleep approaches with images from the day, golden eagles soaring on warm air, ancient fossils exposed in limestone, human footprints overlaid by mountain lion tracks, Chavez's ears swiveling to gather information. Sunset painting the Chisos Mountains in impossible colors. These memories blend and blur, reality becoming dream. Your breathing slows to match remembered hoofbeats. In and out, steady as Chavez's walk. The desert holds you in its vast silence, where time moves like geological processes, and even stones remember when this was seafloor. You drift toward sleep, carried by rhythms older than borders, older than nations, as old as the partnership between humans and horses. In dreams, you ride eternal trails through landscapes that shift between real and imagined. Chavez moves steadily beneath you, crossing territories unmapped by satellites, where ancient peoples still follow seasonal rounds, and water runs clear in every canyon. The complexities of waking life resolve into simpler truths: partnership, landscape, purpose. Rest comes completely. Restoration for tomorrow's challenges. Somewhere in the darkness, Chavez stands hip-shot in his stall, dreaming whatever dreams horses dream. Somewhere, others attempt dangerous crossings. Somewhere, mountain lions hunt and eagles roost, and the Rio Grande continues its patient carving of stone. But for now, there is only sleep, deep and peaceful as the desert night. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and rewards. Tonight, carried by remembered hoofbeats and held by ancient landscapes, you rest in the profound peace that comes from finding your place, however complex, in the great web of life that encompasses the Big Bend. The desert breathes with you in and out, patient as stone and enduring as stars. Sleep now, partner. Tomorrow, you ride again.